Hey, I'm Fred.
And I'm Lee.
And this is Create a Generation.
Create a generation of hype.
So, Fred, I'm stepping in for Ant this week, and why don't you tell our listeners who we're speaking to?
We are speaking to Wally from Little Monster Media, who is one of the smartest people in the world when it comes to audience development and YouTube. And he's got some very interesting stuff to say.
Figuring out new ways to use your library. Understand that your library is an asset, it's not done. Even if it's very time-specific content, you have value in every bit of that.
Just a quick note, this is a cut-down version of this interview. If you want to check out the whole podcast, head on over to your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you can check it out there.
All right, to quote Ant, let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Wally, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Nice to have you, mate. And look, best way we do this is we like to get the guests to introduce themselves so we don't sort of make a hash of it.
Oh man, I was looking forward to you trying to stumble through what you might have remembered from all the times we've talked and whatever LinkedIn things you found. Fine, I'll do it. I'm Wally. I have been working in the digital creator space for over a decade now. Been around the block in terms of lots of different places, MCNs, working with independent creators, several of the largest ones of those, digital publishers, working with people who are making content as a business on different social platforms, and I've worked with traditional media entertainment entities as well, people who are existing in the world of content creation outside of digital media and are trying to sort of make waves and grow audiences within these sort of walls. And these days, I do all of this at a company called Little Monster Media, founded by Matt Geelan, who has been on the show before, a wonderful expert on breaking down all things YouTube. And I'm bringing my perspective to the table, working with our clients, specifically, understanding the how and why of how algorithms and different things work, so we can put together strategies that are more based around understanding what unique thing you can give your audience to build an audience and not just get a bunch of viewership, because there is a fundamental difference between audience and viewership. One is something you can build a business off of and have people continually coming back to talk to you. The other is just a vanity number underneath the video.
We're gonna get into that because there's some interesting things around that we want to ask you. But just before we start, was this something you always wanted to do? Did you think, I want to be in audience development and know about algorithms, or are you a fan of video?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. And I often say that I have had an incredibly specific and linear career path. I've always known what I wanted to do, from where I'm at now, dating back, to a crisp June summer afternoon in 1993, when I knew in the bottom of my heart I wanted to be an archaeologist. And I can trace that path directly from that point to where I am today, and I feel blessed to have been struck so early with wanting to talk to people, and also having the sort of the foresight to understand that following your dreams, following your passions isn't about, I want to do this one crazy thing, and if I don't do it, then I failed. It's about understanding what it is that you want to accomplish and then rolling with all the punches life gave you, because we all have it in us to do something cool and creative and amazing. And too often we get bogged down in a lot of the rat race, or, right now there's a lot of people who are bending over backwards to understand the algorithm and what do they need to do to get all the views. And it's I want to get people out of their heads. Stop thinking about that. Don't beg for engagement, because if you're begging for engagement, you're not getting the right engagement anyway. Do the right things for your audience, and the rest follows, man. And you should obviously know what's going on with the algorithm. You should strategize, and you should always have a plan, but don't go chasing. And I think that I've been successful in instilling that, sense of opportunity in creators of all types, and that's what I want to continue to do.
Well, I'm interested in that, actually, because when you say don't go chasing the audience. Is that something though that needs to be tailored per creator? In other words, is there a one fits all approach that helps someone know how to do that? How do you get someone to work that out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think anything that anyone can say as a strategy or as a best practice is a one size fits one. There's, it's all very unique and all specific. And when I'm looking at things like, trying to understand what's going on with the channel, thinking about an optimization report, there might be a lot of very similar things from one to the next. But I always look at it as, what is the goal of this channel first and foremost? And like, are you trying to just talk people? Are you trying to build audience, or are you trying to build a business? Because those have two very different sort of bottom lines. And then once you kind of have that trajectory, that sort of plotted in, you then have the opportunity to then start peeling away. And there are 100 ways to do absolutely everything. You want to generate more audience retention? Here's 20 different things to do. And where it has to come from is it has to come from the creator, because oftentimes there's not like a Band-Aid that a optimizer can come in and put on a channel. The creator has to come up with something that matters, that works. I'm deeply impressed these days with the people who are doing in-video sort of ad reads, but making their own commercials that are funny and creative and interesting. And that to me is like the perfect example of taking a form and structure that everyone has to do. You could do it the way that the majority of people do it, which is the eye roll. Oh, I have to do this. Here's my sponsor, blah, 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 feed the machine. Or you can have fun with it and own it. And I think those people are going to have the most success.
Look, you talked about those. Obviously, there are a bunch of levers you've got to pull together. Which makes complete sense, because everyone's looking for like that magic bullet kind of thing that's going to get them right to where they need to be. But it is a combination of things. But you've been around for a while in the course of YouTube's history. How has those strategies change over time? Have there been distinct changes in strategies as YouTube's plodded along?
Oh, 100%. A lot of it's based on the algorithm. So what the algorithm cares about, is always changing. The biggest obviously was when the shift to audience retention and watch time and session time over clickability, because that almost overnight completely shifted how people had to think about, this sort of content and these platforms. But I even mentioned it a little bit. Right now, the conversation at YouTube is about audience loyalty and churn. When a year ago, the answer to that would have been, retention time and keeping people on. And while that's probably functionally a very similar thing to be focused on, building around loyalty now, and some of the things they're saying seem to be focusing less on quantity and continual keep telling the algorithm, yes, I want to see more of this content by watching more and more content, and more about identifying audience based on how they watch specific pieces of content and making sure they're serviced your stuff when it comes out, which will be a great boon to animation channels, high production value channels, places that need more time. We as a community, as an industry, should be spending much more time trying to identify creative and successful innovation and lauding it and supporting it and ideating and iterating off of it, as opposed to running around like chickens with their heads cut off trying to find the way to break this algorithm, or it's community tab this week and it's going to be really important, and shorts are going to be great. Maybe, possibly, I would love for shorts to be a new way to communicate on YouTube, but that's that chase that doesn't make sense. And individually, people do it, and then as an industry, we do it too. Like whenever I do like VidCon or any of these sort of larger industry events, I always tell people, like, there's no information I have that's proprietary. I want you all to have it so we can all be smarter together, and then be having different, cooler, better conversations at the next event.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that. It sounds like there are some fairly common mistakes that people who come to you, or traps maybe that people fall into, these misconceptions. Are there some things that people repeatedly are asking for the same kind of answers, which they're not necessarily there for you to give?
Absolutely. There's always stuff that comes up, and I don't begrudge anybody for it. There's a lot of reasons why people have struggle with and labor under these impressions. First and foremost, the answer I hate giving the most, because it's the lamest answer in the world, and I know it. But when people ask me how long a video needs to be, and I tell them as long as it has to be. Video lengths are incredibly important right now, but what's important isn't that you hit a 10-minute marker. What's important is that people watch as much of the video as possible and then are directed to another piece of content. And they're most often easily directed to more content if they watched fully and enjoyed the first piece. So, if you have a video that's 5-ish minutes long and you try to bump it up to 10 because you want to have mid-roll breaks, and so you put a bunch of filler in it, or, stuff that obviously probably wouldn't make a lot of sense, you are, yes, increasing your total watch time. Your view durations overall are going to go up. But it's not necessarily better for the channel to have that. And so, it's a balance that we always want to play. And I always tell people, like, look, the most important thing is getting people to the end of the video. And the best way to do that is to make it a great video. And sometimes making great content means it's got to be quick. It's got to be shorter. It's got to get to the point. Sometimes length is great. I mean, some of my favorite channels right now are channels that do a 50-minute video of deep diving and dissecting a topic. And those videos need to be exactly, I would take it if they were twice as long and watch them all the way through. So that's something that comes up just all the time.
So what is a good starting position for a new creator or a creator who's maybe trying to establish himself on the platform?
If you're just starting out right now, you need to be brutally honest with yourself about a couple key things. What audience do you really want? Answering this question will allow you to figure out, do you need to be in a specific niche? Do you need to focus your content? Do you need to be broad with your content? What are you trying to accomplish? But really know the answer to that. Because if you're waffly on that, then you're going to be waffling on your content creation. Beyond that, you need to be true to yourself in terms of what's entertaining to you. It's an age-old thing that people, like, the second book ever written, someone asked, why did you write it? And they're like, because I wanted to read it. But you should be making content that entertains you first and foremost, because if you can entertain yourself, oftentimes your toughest critic, then the chances of there being someone else out there that's going to really enjoy it and really dig it is incredibly high. And so be honest with yourself with questions like that and why you're doing what you're doing. Are you trying to build a business? Are you trying to just be a YouTuber? Are you trying to say something? Answer these questions, know what those answers are, and let that determine some of your next steps. And then lastly, in terms of when you're actually putting, rubber to the road and doing what you're doing, is, look at your peers. Every video type has some peer out there right now in form or format or structure. Find where audiences already congregate in the people that you think would congregate under you, and see what works, see what connects with them. It's important to understand your peers, potentially from a collaboration standpoint, from a how audiences expect to engage in content standpoint, to see what's been done, what's been said, so you don't, if you end up talking about a tried and true topic, that you have some unique voice and unique perspective to offer something, and just really be present in the community, because, you might be you in your own little island and your own sort of person, but to an audience member, you're just one of an army of potential clicks when I search for what I search for. So you have to assume that they have watched a lot of other content that's in your periphery, and knowing what your audience is watching and knowing what's working within that audience is a really good way for you to start iterating towards that. Don't copy anything. Don't just take things wholesale, but iterate, take it and make it your own. It's a really good first step point. And I see a lot of people have a lot of success. And then once you can kind of get some traction there, then you can grow, then you can build it out into other directions. And, who knows, sky's the limit.
Well, I've got a question around audience development. People who are listening to this, people who have channels, what should they be doing to find out what their audience wants so that they can build and grow an audience and not just viewers?
Great question. I mean, there's a lot of different things, so I'll just, in no particular order, talk about a couple of them. One is communicate with your audience. And first and foremost, you have to open up as many lines of communication as possible, wherever you can. And at first, it's going to be a trickle. And I know a lot of people who, have small channels and literally reply to every single comment and are trying to start conversations and stuff. But you just have to keep at it. And then if you're not getting the results you want, then you need to experiment. You need to try new things. You need to move the needle somehow. And if you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's not going to necessarily just change overnight unless something else changes. So that I think is key. Understanding that you're not an island, you're not a silo, that other YouTubers exist and matter to your audience. If you're a channel, like, pull a list of videos that you think your fans are going to like. Give them something on your homepage that's variety and that makes them want to come back. Try something new, experiment with that, incorporate that into your content too. Do some free promo for stuff that you like and your audience is going to like, because that engages with them. You're kind of then looking at the YouTube platform in the same way they're looking at it, and people connect with that. So that's important. Not ever being afraid of a failure. So, like, I don't know if I want to make this change or try this thing because I think that's going to ruin my algorithm and ruin my views. And just get out of your way, try it, do it. YouTube is such a valuable platform for experimentation. Any negative impact, algorithmic, is not forever. If it's so fragile, your algorithmic profile, that one change means no one will ever see your content again, then you've got bigger issues than what that one change was going to be. You're not connecting with your audience the right way to begin with.
Hey, well, we are actually out of time, believe it or not. It just seemed to fly by. But look, before we finish off, we always ask, do you have any great tips for, like, new emerging creators or creators of any size, really, going forward? What are your best tips for them?
Right now, really, this is a tip if you have some success. And I'll give it this because I think it's something that's going to be a really important talking point in the next year to 2 years. But figuring out new ways to use your library. Understand that your library is an asset. It's not done. Even if it's very time-specific content, you have value in every bit of that. And no one has really embraced what that means yet in terms of, is there syndication opportunity? Is there, compilation and new asset creation opportunity? Is there, something where you can give your fans, stuff to maybe remix and try out and do stuff? Like, your library, once a video is done, it does not become this inert bit of your past history that just exists on an on-demand platform. Your library can be a thriving thing. If you made stuff in 2013 that was fun and funny and engaging and entertaining, there's nothing about the fact that it was made in 2013 that means someone in 2020 isn't going to want to see it. And so, YouTube doesn't do a really good job of bubbling that stuff up. And I know they're trying, and it's kind of part of the stuff we talked about earlier with that loyalty thing. So how do you do it? What can you do to shine that light on that library? And then what can you do within other platforms to start thinking intelligently and interestingly about what your library can do for you? Every asset you create has a tangible piece of value to it. And I think that once we can kind of figure out the right way to utilize that, we're going to see a lot of really cool diversification and monetization opportunities. And we're going to see some really creative people do some really cool things to keep it all alive.
Well, mate, thank you so much. That was actually very, very insightful. Thanks so much for being on the show. Hopefully you can come back in the future and talk to us a little bit more. I know you're involved with some of our programs coming up. It'll be great to chat to you in more detail there. But yeah, mate, thanks so much. And hopefully see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And you might have made the biggest mistake of your life inviting me back, because I'll be there. I'll keep coming. I unloaded 1% of the ability of me to talk about this stuff. So plenty more in the future.
Looking forward to it, mate.
Thanks, Wally.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Create a generation. Look on the mic.